me luck getting through this because making this stuff for the YouTube, I try to slip things through on YouTube. It's kind of a bit of a challenge. So click the links for the Odyssey, Bit Chute, join the Telegram or the support channel on Coffee or the crypto. Thanks for someone made a donation on crypto last night, but it's anonymous. So Mr. Anon. So Canada, police trample peaceful protesters. Why? Because the police will do whatever their puppet masters tell them to do. And the funny thing is they will lie about it. It's like everyone has a cell phone, and some people brought drones to film with. It's like they're filming you, police. They are filming you, acting like just the brain dead thugs you are. And the left wing, it's like, oh, the left wing, you guys have some principles, right? You're against police brutality. Oh no, this is okay in this circumstances. It's okay. So then you don't have principles. The only thing that's coming out of this that I do like is finally Thin Blue Line is dead. The MAGA normie crowd has finally realized there's no Thin Blue Line. The police are not on your side. The police will gladly support the people who voted to defund the police because the police are just mindless robots who will do whatever their puppet masters tell them to do. So finally, that MAGA normie Thin Blue Line garbage is dead. It's like washing away some of this fabrication that the MAGA normie has built up in their head of Trump is coming to save them, or that alphabet group is coming to save them. It's like no. These people are all subverted. They're all working for puppet masters. We are coming to save us. You're not going to be able to. The police and the military are going to get their shit together and they're really going to clean. No, that's not going to happen. They'll probably go whatever side the power is like. If there's a tipping point in power, then they will probably follow that tipping point. But until then, they will follow whatever their puppet masters tell them to do. But if nothing else happens out of this, the MAGA normie crowd finally realized like they've been completely betrayed by Trump. Hey Trump, why didn't you issue pardons for those J6 people? What do you mean? No, you could issue them ahead of time. Oh, yeah, you pardon drug dealers. And rappers and things. It's like, yeah, why didn't you pardon those J6 guys? They're in prison because of you. Oh, because Kushner told me not. Yeah, Trump's not your guy. The Thin Blue Line is not your guy. Military is probably more likely to find supporters on the side of the military because the police are different than the military because the police are used to abusing their own people, where the military are kind of used to fighting the other, where the police fight their own, or at least people. It's a different psychology. So if the shit was ever to kick off, you're more likely to find allies with the military and not so much with the police. Though, if there really was a breakdown in law and order, who knows who would take what sides. That's kind of the strength of, the strength of the globalists in making a diverse state is that you don't have unity. So you can't overthrow an oppressive regime unless you have a unified country, and unity is going to be obviously tribal unity. Like if Canada was French and English only, they would be able. They wouldn't. I mean, you wouldn't even be in the circumstances you're in now. But it's only through diversity that you're able. It's like how do you bust a union? By the same way you bust a nation. I'm trying not to get too base for YouTube, but I think people who are listening to this kind of know what's up with that goal of. Tall grass and fomenting discord with diversity is our strength. So where's that been true? Like, where is that true today? Like, can we talk about this? No, we can't talk about it. It's just a talking point, and then you move on from it. It's like, yeah, truth doesn't fear investigation, and we really should be able to talk about this stuff. Anyway, so there's it's a constant challenge to not be too base for YouTube. There's a spectrum of liberty to tyranny, and at a point where you have so much tyranny, it's obviously requires revolution, where it's clear and apparent to everyone that you cannot continue this way. And the thing with that kind of thing is, as the saying goes, well-fed men are not likely to want to suffer any discomfort. And the problem with the machinations they set in place over the past 100 years is that when it finally ripens into fruition with, peak Weimar inflation, it could be in a few years, it could be very soon, or it could be in 10 years. But by the time that happens, the country is such a Brazilification that there's nothing you can do about it. You can't unite because there's not enough people on one tribe to unite anymore. It's like, why would Brazil or Mexico not be able to ever get anything done? Because along what lines will they unite is what I'm trying. Oh, well, we got the Constitution. yeah, half the country wants to burn the Constitution down. Constitution is just a piece of paper without the people who made that, who breathed life into it, the English, the French, the Germans, that kind of thing. So the spectrum of liberty to tyranny at the point where it requires revolution. But because of human psychology, the government behavior actually goes deep into tyranny before people see that it's necessary to throw off the tyrants. Bolshevism, globalism, whatever you want to call it, is kind of a certain... No, it's not fascism. Fascism has a meaning. All these words have meaning. Fascism, it means to care for your own tribe of people. Bolshevism, globalism means one ruling class ruling this kind of diverse, rootless class of people who have no past, they have no future, they're easily led by the nose, which is funny because those nose rings are so increasingly popular. So Bolshevism is a series of these ever-increasing peaks and valleys, slowly getting away from the founding Constitution in America or the Charters of Rights in Canada or whatever the Europeans call their stuff. So Europe, how do you like that free speech? Oh, we actually don't have free speech. It's just understood that we have, as Englishmen, we have free speech. You really should be writing that down. I mean, it's easier to defend something if you can point to a point on a piece of paper where you say it's a founding article. It's like, oh, it's just understood. Like Englishmen would never censor other Englishmen. Yeah, the English don't run England anymore. So you don't even have a piece of paper to point to. It's like, admittedly, it's just a piece of paper, but it is a starting point. Anyway, people of those, you take these slow little incremental steps to get away from constitutions and charters of rights. For America, part of it was the loss of states' rights and the increasing power of the Fed, and the use of the 14th Amendment to replace European Americans, or the banker problem in the Federal Reserve. The Founding Fathers did a lot of good. Oh, they weren't perfect. No, they weren't perfect, but we're not perfect now. They did good things and great things. They didn't do bad things so much. If you look at the history of slavery, it's kind of a trip, as so much as they were negligent to allow bad things to happen with the black man who sued to turn his indentured servant into a slave that he bought from a merchant. Which is, more on that will be for Odyssey and Bit Chute, the history of America, the 1619 Project. Yeah, that's, I'm going to tell you what she didn't tell you, which is, it's not, it would get you instantly banned from Google services. You've talked about it on YouTube. The Founding Fathers did a lot of great things, and they did their best, but they were only human. But they lost to the bankers because the bankers had more in-group preferences. The Founding Fathers didn't know who they were dealing with. They didn't understand how ancient and evil the Rothschilds were. 1913 should have had people up in arms, or 1965 the Hart-Celler Act, but there was no system in place to teach of the dangers to nationalism. Like, it would need to be a part of the Western philosophy. If there's ever a Civil War, World War III, where we throw off these tyrants today, it would need to be incorporated into the West, how the nationalists defeated the globalists, and it would need to be constantly taught to children and educated so you never repeat this slow creep into globalism and the rise of the banker class that's kind of been happening since Aristotle's day. So some series of small steps away from liberty in Canada and Europe and everywhere else. Pretty soon you look around the country and you don't recognize it. It's like this high crime, low trust, dystopian hellhole. Go look at, I don't know, Memphis, Detroit, Chicago, LA. I live in Beverly Hills. Well, for those of us who don't, various parts of any big city. Go look at those big cities, and then go look at them in the 40s and 50s and 60s. It's like, oh, what changed? For YouTube, let me phrase this very gently. Look at who is protesting for freedom today in Canada and the various American protests when they're protesting against being compelled to take an experimental thing, and then compare that to who is looting and rioting, because those are two different groups. Now multiply that over time. That's the future of America, Canada, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. Police view you as the enemy because a lot of reasons. One, you're not a tribe. Canada and America is not a nation anymore. It's a commercial zone ruled by Schwab, Soros, the Rothschilds. Ask yourself, why do you need a militarized police state now? Why didn't we need cops in armored personnel carriers in 1950? What happened? What changed that police now look and act like the military? Every year we live in an increasing police state, and like nobody seems to have a problem with it, because if you start pulling on that thread, it pulls on other threads of why it's necessary. What happened? Why do we need it now? The truth doesn't fear investigation, right? We should be able to talk about all things. Not on YouTube, but this is probably as far as I can go and still maintain the channel on YouTube. Look at Los Angeles in 1960. Look at it today. What happened? If you want to know what I'm talking about, you can look at videos on YouTube. They show old cities in America in the 40s, 50s, 60s, even the 70s, and you look at it, it's like it was a first world back then. And you look at it now, it's like, oh, this is just a post-apocalyptical hellhole. It's a third world. It looks like a third world nation. Oh, America is very rich. No, there's a 1% of America that's very rich. Everyone else doesn't have shit because of that 1%. Anyway, so we learned that, I'll say European peaceful protests are going to be met with violence. BLM riots have been ignored for decades. The first night of the George Floyd, 4 BLM men snuggled 2 white girls and deleted one. And there's a video camera, home security camera. This one naked white girl is running around begging for help from the pounding on doors trying to get help. That was the first night of the George Floyd riot. Most people didn't know about that. Like, why? Because the media didn't cover it. Don't get me wrong. They briefly covered it. It's in and out of the news in a nanosecond, and you'll never hear of it again. Like, you can try to Google it. I mean, you'll find it. You'll eventually find it. But you're like, the depths to which you have to, like, why doesn't the media track all the violence that's been associated with the BLM Antifa riots? Because who do you think is pulling the strings on the media? Anyway, it's not paranoia when they really are out to get you. Don't you think it's odd that Antifa and BLM were able to riot for decades, if you include the Occupy, but right-wing European groups get shut down instantly? It just, think about that for a second. Why is there a difference in treatment? Also, remember Occupy Wall Street? A protest against the banker puppet masters. 5 years later, Bank of America is sponsoring a gay pride parade. Protest all you want, but if you start to actually go down that rabbit hole, you either get deleted with 2 in the back of the skull through a drug deal gone wrong, or a robbery where they don't actually rob anything. They just walk up to you and put 2 in the back of your head. Or you get imprisoned for some charges, or you get subverted. I mean, it's easy enough to buy these people off. And look at who was funding the BLM Antifa. Look at who was actually pulling their wallets out and paying the bills. Who was renting equipment for Antifa and BLM? Who was renting that equipment? You can find that information too on Telegram and Gab, but you're not going to find it in the mainstream. So look at those people, because that's kind of the real story. Antifa and BLM is not so much a story. They're hyenas and lions. Look at who's pulling the strings, who's opening the gates, who's funding it. Like, all this stuff happens because of money. Like, riots can happen spontaneously, but organized riots happen because there's a lot of money into it. Look at who's footing the bill for that. It's like, well, I mean, at one level, it is literally Bank of America and Soros, who paid $1.25 billion to, well, no one really knows where that money went. It went somewhere. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. This is what happens when white people protest, when French English protest. BLM protests, they get on their knees. Gee, who's pulling the string in the West? It doesn't seem like white people are running the West. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys all next episode.